You own 11 buildings, 4 an hour outside a city most people couldn't find on a map, and the man who changes your oil doesn't know your last name. $60 million, and the truck you drive has a crack in the windshield you've been meaning to fix for 2 years. You never fixed it. It never mattered enough. It started with an email, not a text, not a call, an email sent at 6:14 on a Tuesday morning from a county auction site. Subject line, Unit 214, lien notice. You almost deleted it. You were standing in a Lowe's parking lot in Danville, a mid-sized town wedged between 2 counties nobody bragged about, holding a bag of deck screws when you opened it instead. The gap between what people think wealth looks like and what wealth actually is, that's the whole story here. It's not a car, it's not a watch, it's a spreadsheet nobody sees, a stack of leases in a manila folder, a bank statement you don't screenshot for anyone. Unit 214 belonged to a man named Rutherford Combs, who'd stopped paying rent 11 months earlier and never came back for whatever was inside. The facility manager, a woman named Denise who'd run the place for 19 years, told you up front, probably just furniture, maybe a boat trailer. People forget stranger things. The opening bid was $190. You weren't looking to get rich that morning. You were looking to kill 40 minutes before a dentist appointment because someone at the gym had mentioned storage auctions the week before, half joking, the way people mention things they'll never actually do. You did it anyway. That's the part nobody tells you about how this works. Not vision, not risk tolerance, just a Tuesday, a parking lot, an email you almost deleted, and a decision to be curious for 40 minutes instead of scrolling your phone. Everything that came after, the 11 buildings, the number that would eventually sit in your accountant's spreadsheet with more zeros than you'd ever said out loud, traces back to that one small refusal to ignore something boring. You didn't know it yet. You just paid the $190. Unit 214 had furniture, like Denise guessed. It also had a boxed, unopened commercial popcorn machine, a stack of vintage concert posters somebody on a forum told you might be worth something, and a coin collection that turned out to be mostly wheat pennies and one 1916 D dime worth $1,100. You cleared out the unit yourself over a weekend, sold what you could, and walked away with $900 profit after fees. Not life-changing, but it was more money than the deck screws had cost, and it had taken you 4 hours. You went back to the next auction, then the one after that. By the 3rd month, you'd stopped thinking of it as a hobby and started thinking of it as a pattern you hadn't finished testing. You bought a unit in a facility outside Millbrook for $280, mostly tools, a table saw with a bad motor, and a set of matching luggage you sold to a reseller for $400 flat. Another unit, $450, netted you almost nothing. A lesson, not a loss, the kind Denise had warned you about without making it sound like a warning. Then Denise mentioned, almost offhand, that the facility's owner was tired, 71 years old, no kids interested in running it, thinking about selling the whole property, 42 units, a small office, a chain-link fence that needed replacing, for $110,000. You had $18,000 saved. You'd never taken out a business loan in your life. You took out the loan anyway. Structured against the property itself, the bank barely blinking because the numbers worked on paper before they worked anywhere else. Monthly rent across 42 units, even half occupied, covered the note with room left over. Within a year, you weren't collecting popcorn machines and table saws anymore, you were collecting rent. The second facility came 18 months later, 90 miles south, a run-down lot with a broken gate arm that the seller, a man liquidating his father's estate, practically wanted gone. $65,000, cash flow positive by month 4. You still drove the same truck. The crack in the windshield showed up around then from a rock on a gravel access road behind the second property. You never got it fixed. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you already knew you liked what the truck said about you, which was nothing at all. By year 4, you owned 5 facilities. You'd branched past storage into the adjacent boring things nobody glamorizes. A stretch of gravel lot near the interstate you leased out as commercial parking for $1,800 a month. 2 billboards on land you'd bought almost as an afterthought when a farmer needed to sell fast. A coin-op laundromat you took over from a retiring owner named Walt Feaster for $78,000, who taught you personally how to read the coin meters before he handed you the keys. Each asset had its own quiet arithmetic. None of them made a sound. That was the year you met Trent at a regional real estate mixer you almost skipped. Trent drove an Escalade he'd leased 11 months earlier, wore a watch he mentioned within the first 4 minutes of conversation, and told anyone who'd listen about the 8-figure portfolio he was building, though nobody ever saw a deed. He looked at your truck in the parking lot afterward and made a joke about it, not unkindly, the way people joke about things they don't understand. You laughed along. You let him believe what he wanted to believe. Being underestimated by Trent cost you nothing and had, more than once, gotten you a better price at a negotiating table where the other side assumed they were dealing with someone smaller than they were. That same year, your cousin Marisol called about her son's medical bills. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to flatten a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. $4,000 she didn't know how to raise in 3 weeks. You could have written the check without noticing it leave your account. You thought about it for 2 days instead. You didn't send the money. You sent a payment plan you co-signed, and you sent 2 afternoons of your time teaching her how to read a lease, how a payment plan actually worked, how to negotiate the hospital's billing department down before agreeing to anything. It felt colder than writing the check. You knew it would look colder from the outside, but you'd watched money handed to people without structure evaporate before. You'd watched it happen to a friend once, an unearned windfall gone in 5 months with nothing to show for it but a nicer car and the same problems waiting underneath. A check would have solved $4,000 once. What you gave Marisol solved the next $4,000 problem too, and the one after that. She thanked you, a little confused, the way people are confused by help that doesn't look like help. The email that told you the actual number arrived on a Thursday from your accountant. Subject line, Q3 Portfolio Summary Draft. You were sitting in the truck outside the 11th facility, the one you'd closed on 7 weeks earlier, waiting for a locksmith to finish rekeying the office door. The windshield crack had spread another 2 inches since spring. You still hadn't fixed it. You opened the attachment on your phone because there was nothing else to do for the next 20 minutes. A spreadsheet, rows and columns, cap rates, depreciation schedules, a consolidated net worth figure at the bottom of the 4th tab in a font no larger than anything else on the page. $60,014,220. You read it twice, not because you didn't believe it, because it looked so ordinary sitting there. Black text on a white cell, the same font your accountant used for a $14,000 quarter 3 years earlier. No music, no one in the truck with you to tell. The locksmith knocked on the window a minute later to say the door was done, and you thanked him and paid him in cash from the same worn leather wallet you'd carried since before Unit 214, the one with the seams starting to split at the corner. You drove home past the Lowe's where the email about Rutherford Combs's unit had first pulled you out of your day years earlier, holding a different bag of deck screws for a different small repair you'd get around to eventually. The parking lot looked the same. You looked the same. That was the part that never stopped being strange. How completely the outside of a life can stay unchanged while the architecture underneath it rebuilds itself entirely, one boring transaction at a time. Trent still doesn't know. Marisol's son is healthy, and she's since read 3 leases of her own without needing your help. The windshield still has the crack. What would the people around you assume about your life if they only had what they could see to go on?